What title would you give yourself?
Why would I even give myself a title? I would say that I am a student and will remain that until I close my eyes and I'm assigned to my next assignment, I call it. The idea is that if you're a teacher and you're now going to be passed the torch, your father is going to pass the torch to you as I passed it to your father. What happens is that if you really think it's about you, don't get into it. And a lot of the young brothers and sisters out there are going for the notoriety, the 15 minutes of fame. They're going because they have the camera and they can now get clicks for monies and stuff. If you don't have content in what you're doing, and if your content isn't to free up the next generation and make it greater than you, then what we call them is pimps. We call them parasites. Because what they're doing is they're taking your energy so that they can build themselves up. Okay? You don't see me out there constantly like that. I don't need to do that. I kind of purge on stage. Right. You know, I call all kinds of MFs, but I don't use it as a punctuation mark. Right. Young people use the MF, 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 and then say, hey, this is it, and then MF, 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 and then here's this, and then word, and then they use a little bit of, no, that ain't it. That's what I call cut and paste intellectuals. They cut and paste what other people say and then make it believe that that's what they said. No, it ain't like that. You're being handed a very sacred torch. This came from my elders, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Dr. Van Sertima, okay, Baba Heru. These were the elders that we dealt with. Dr. What's her name? I just love this sister, Marimba Ani, okay, Shahrazad Ali. These people were the ones that actually were out there in the libraries. I know this is not nice to say about your generation, but how many of y'all have ever had to sweat out a library? Now that the computer is up, yeah. You know, the library contains something. When you're using a book, there's a whole other part of your brain that develops when you're reading, and you're learning the words, and you're understanding the mind of the author. Right. When you're taking pictures and you're looking at pictures, which is what the generation is into today, it shuts down a part of your brain. You're going into alpha mode now, which is, there's no filter. That's what movies do, and that's what they do with pictures. Pictures take away your filter and goes directly to your subconscious. When you're reading, you're in control of what it is those words mean to you. You're assigning the meaning, not someone else. And so when you're looking at a book and you're reading a book, your mind begins to develop both sides. The brain begins to go into the right brain and begins to think of all the variables and meaning. The left brain is just computing information in order to justify what it is that it's reading. Okay, am I reading the right sentence in the right context? But now you have both sides of the brain working. Okay, and that's the secret to your even the younger ones. Do not have your children looking at TV or playing with computers before the age of 7. Why? Because the brain is a holographic imaging instrument. It needs both sides working. In today's youth, there's only one side working of the brain being developed, and it's doing this. Why? It's causing your brain to start hitting up with neurons, firing constantly, so that you can make sure that you keep up with it. Now you take that same mind and you go into a classroom where the teacher says, okay, well everybody please sit down and let's turn to page. The brain is doing this. Right, and it's like, you know, okay, yeah, okay, hurry up teacher, let me know what it is. Give me my next shot of stimulation. Right. That's what they're doing to us. They're dumbing us down by accelerating us up. And we cannot filter out any of the information they're giving so that you just become a download machine. It's downloading information not only in the pictures, but what's behind the pictures. Right. So what I would say to your young people is we would never, and if I had the schooling and I had a city, I would never expose the children to anything that did not have a one-to-one physical and interpersonal relationship with. So children young would learn about growing food, would learn about what it is to get out in the wilderness, would learn about what a cow was, what animals were, because they're not looking at them on a screen. They're actually smelling, touching, and feeling these animals, and then that part of the brain that is actually logging in three-dimensional tactile information and saying, I know what a tiger feels like, I know not just what it looks like, I know what an elephant's trunk feels like, and I don't know just because it's on TV, that's an elephant. There's a different way to teach these children, and unless you're teaching the children during the formative years, okay, to understand and understand how to manage real from unreal, then everything that they see on TV from the time they're programmed will be the only thing that's real. And that's what's happening to our children today. They're very fast with taking care of what's on the computer.
It's 3-year-olds that know how to work iPhones.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because why? They don't have any tactile experience. And that's why the obesity problem. The obesity problem, because we were outside, man. I mean, after, it's like my father would just drop kick me like after Saturday night, after cartoons, out. And we out there playing, we out there in the sweat, we drinking from garden hoses, we didn't care. Because we were building up, we were out there touching, getting into the right thing. That's back when it was a little bit easier to be who we were. We didn't say it was, it was all roses, but it was easier. Today, because they've trapped us in a digital world, that's all our brain is able to actually function under. And this is the warning to your fellow millennials, because you all don't have a rudder on the ship that you all are on right now. You have to go back to find where to go forward. You have to begin to learn and to understand what the elders meant, okay, and actually apply it today, which is not going to be something that you can easily do. It's not something that they're going to say, yeah, let's go do it, because at this point, your mind is already focused into what the future they have planned for you. But the classics never die. Those classics are the Dr. Benz, the Dr. Clarks, the Dr. Van Sertimo. Like I was saying to your father, they brought a sense of ethics and sophistication. They went in and they mined information that we didn't even know existed. They put their lives on the line, their careers on the line. They did everything for us. Some of them just died in poverty for doing that. Could you imagine? Great minds like that wasting away because they became superficial. Why? Because now everybody could say what they said and get it around the world in a microsecond. Whereas you had to work to find out where they were. You had to know where they were and then travel there and sit in their presence. That's gone. All of that is gone, and that's part of the experience in what is called growth. And that's what's missing, and that's what we've discarded that part. There is a sequence to the growth for a human being to become whole. And the young people are sensing that something is missing. We're glad that you're looking back at people like ourselves, like Black Dot, and you're trying to get that substance that's missing from your life. Look more for the substance in your life rather than the superficial, because the superficial is put there so that you definitely ignore the substance. Okay? I can only tell you that as an elder, just being 67, you don't get to be 67 in this day and age by being a dummy. You get to that point because you've been working at it, you've seen it happen, you've been in the trenches, you're not just being a spectator, you've helped to change people's minds. You've helped even ancestors come to this plane where doctors told them no, you couldn't get, you can't get pregnant. Well, I have 35 godchildren who says that they're lying. Okay? Don't get caught up in the superficial. Brothers like this, Brother Malcolm, these are the brothers that are searching for your tomorrow. What is it and how is it going to look tomorrow? And again, nobody's here forever. What is the truth. That'll always come around again. You keep trying to shove it down, suppress it, it'll pop right up. Because just as much as you crush that coal, the harder you crush that coal, the more you make it into a diamond. Yeah. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I like to pontificate. I know shut me down.
No, it was a great point because every time me and my father talk about things, he goes, "I remember sitting in lectures for 8-9 hours and things like that." And I'm not gonna lie. Every time he says that, I just get nightmares. Like 8 hours in one place. Like how? And I remember he took me to a few of your lectures, and I remember being in there for like 3 hours, and then you would get to something. We'll get to that later. I'm like, later? You've been here.
Oh yeah, we are. We just getting started. 3 hours into it, it's just getting started. Oh, now try 11 3/4. Try 11 3/4 hours in one place. We set the record because Bobby was 10 and a half hours, and right after that we came in 2 weeks later and did 11 3/4. And that's who I miss too. One of your better elders, one of your more powerful elders is Bobby Hemmett, and one of those also is going before us. Bobby Hemmett is like a wounded soldier, but one that went before us is Dr. Delbert Blair.
Yes.
And so we had some great soldiers out there that were fighting in the front lines. I'm just one who's pretty much coming in as a strategist to teach you what it is the enemy is like, how the different tactics are used to undermine your ability to deal with critical thinking and so forth. That's all I'm here to do. I'm just here to point the way. I'm not here to lead and put the sword out front, because too many times I've done that and I look behind, ain't nobody there. Okay? And that's how we have to do it. We have to do it where the young people, when the soldiers, we were out there. We were out there one time, out there banging the streets, passing out flyers before you had your texting and all that. We were out there with paper, handing out stuff. The war's changed. It's become more sophisticated, so we have to change and become more sophisticated in the countermeasures we use.
When in your life, like growing up, when did you come? Like, what was that moment that you came into consciousness?
Great question. Almost died. Well, I died once, and I know that's something that people don't really want to hear about it, but I was 7, and that's another story. But at 19, going into 19th year, I was suffering from a condition based on me being vaccinated. I was super vaccinated back in the West Indies because they believed in that. And that crippled me, one of my parts of my body, and I'm not going to tell anybody that. But what happened was, I got crippled. I was on my way home, and I got an attack. And I was on one knee, hanging onto the fence a block away from my house on Carroll Street. And I said to myself, okay, if I can get up and just die on my porch, I'll be all right. But if I can live through this, I promise that I will teach and I will give to the people what it is that I've learned. And as soon as that happened, it wasn't more than a month later that I was turned on by someone. I could always try to remember who it was, but they told me about a man named Kanya Kakumba, who had a tree of life on 125th Street and Lenox Avenue. It was called University at the corner of Lenox Avenue, UCLA.
Oh, wow.
UCLA, New York, we call it. And in there were books. And being raised in Obia when I was young in Trinidad, because light skin, still Trinidadian. You hear that? All right. But when I heard about this bookstore and I went in for the first time and met him, I met with somebody who was a Wall Street stockbroker who gave it all up and turned into this book and had this place. And every day I could get my coins together to travel up to Manhattan, I was there. And I read books, copious books, and you wouldn't believe it. I even took a course in speed reading. Ended up reading 3,500 books.
Wow.
Right? Of course, the speed reading, it helped. But then there were certain books that I didn't want to speed read. I just wanted to that kind of marinate and savor. You don't want to stuff food down your mouth. You want to savor it. So from that point forward, I healed myself of that. You wouldn't believe it. And I did it. And then from that point, my mother and my father, bless them, they're now transitioned to the realm of the ancestors. And I remember coming back home after traveling, being a musician and all that crazy stuff. And I said, I don't want to be in the world anymore to them. And they said, well, you could stay here. My father went back to the West Indies, my mother stayed, and I stayed in the basement. And every day in that basement, I was reading another book, even though I didn't finish it. And at times when I fell asleep on the floor reading, and wherever my head was at the time I woke, that was the book I read. So I was in the middle of it all. I was being prepared for something.
Right.
And, I didn't know what it was. But then after a while, when it would get warm, I would go out, 6 o'clock in the morning when it was bright and it looked like the sun was coming up, And I would sit on the porch, you know what it looks like in Carroll Street, and people would be walking by to their work, and I would be saying, you know, hey, how you doing? So how you feeling? They say, well, I got a little something, well, my back hurts and so forth. So I would say, well, try this, try that. And sure enough, as they were walking by, and they would tell me, they would say, yeah, that worked, man. You know, I said, maybe this is what it is I gave a promise to. So I gave up pretty much everything. The music business kind of died. People were robbing our music, stole it. A lot of times we were sabotaged. We had big deals getting ready to happen, and then it would crash. And I would say, well, God, we're right there. What happened? Well, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. So what happened? I began to do the work and talk to people. And then I met with someone back then who, after my first wife had gone, we had split. Then I met with Queen Afua. And she had her place on Nostrand Avenue. And so we began working together for a while, business-wise. And then eventually, you know, we married. But that's when we began building it up, because I knew Gary Bird. And I had somebody who knew Gary Bird, and we began going on the radio. And then Gary Bird used to be pushing us out there. And before we knew it, we had all of Harlem, we had all of Brooklyn, we had everybody would be coming to the Heal Thyself Center. And we would be throwing down with our conscious, you know, things. But then after that, she and I split, and then we had it over in at my home on Carroll Street. And somebody put out that AIDS was coming, you know, AIDS was this and HIV was that. So after I told them that was a hoax, and they kicked me off of LIB. And after they kicked me off of LIB, I said, well, you know what? People need to know. And that's when, in 1989, I started something called the Gathering of the Masters. And from 1989 to 1997, those years, we put on what actually became the conscious community. Because that's where we introduced Bobby Hemmett. Bobby Hemmett was introduced into Brooklyn, New York, through the Gathering of the Masters. See, I'm giving you all a little bit of history now, and your father knows what time it is. And then that began to grow, because people began coming in and saying, could we film, could we film? And it was Bert, remember Bert?
Sister Bert.
Sister Bert Lockett. She was one of the first people to chronicle the conscious community, the real one. Not this perpetrating nonsense you see out here. The real one, the one that started it. So she's the one who actually did the work on doing that, and then Minister Clemson Brown was doing the conscious community from the elders' side. From the Dr. Benz, the Dr. Clark. He has the greatest collection, what would be the Alexandrian Library of our indigenous, black, whatever you want to call us, African, American, whatever. He has film that would be the Alexandrian Library. I went down in his basement. Every part of his basement is stacked with film of the great peoples and places he's traveled to listen to people. And so these are the people that I, you know, nurtured myself on. I sat at the feet of Dr. Clark, and he was my mentor, as well as Brother Kaba Hiawatha. I sat at the feet of a man named Krishnamurti. You get to know him somewhere down the line. And I learned from him his philosophies. I liked him because he didn't take no joke. I took my Shishi style from him and from Steve Coakley. Steve Coakley was no joke either. That's another one of the masters who actually exposed the boule and all the fraternities and everything. So, you know, there's a rich heritage that a lot of the superficial chroniclers who are doing what you're doing, but turning it into this circus. There is a rich history that's becoming a twistery, I call it, that you and your brotherhood and sisterhood need to keep intact, because these are going to be treasures later on. Right. When everything else shuts down, they're going to be looking to you. What's the next thing that you got? What else who else are you knowing? Who else you think that we can listen to? Because your credibility is going to rise if you stay. Don't look for the flashing lights and the circus and all of the fireworks. Do this, 1-to-1. It works each time. Okay?
So you have a lecture tomorrow.
Yes.
On transhumanism. Do you a sneak peek of what is what that is going to entail for the people?
Well, again, as I said in many of my other lectures, that
because this is part 2.
Yes, part 2. Right.
And my father told me he was at part 1.
Oh
He
yeah,
said it was legendary.
yeah.
So.
Well, give thanks. What happens is that I find that my work is to provide the necessary countermeasures in the way of language and semantics, and through semiotics, which is symbolism, with the PowerPoints. That's my semiotic contribution to the semantics that I add to that picture. What I want to do is, I find that as I go along, a lot of brothers and sisters who contact me say, I don't know what, they say this, they're saying this, and they're doing this, she's doing this, he's doing this, he's saying this, she's saying this, but they don't have a countermeasure. They don't know what to say back to shut down that argument. Because these arguments that tend to do more to undermine us as a people, there's no one that has studied the backstory that gives them the legitimacy for what they're talking about. There are many people, and this is the information does not just belong to us. It doesn't belong to black, white, blue, yellow, green, or whatever. The truth is out there, and the thing is that there are people representing it to some extent. There are people representing it to the rawest extent, and there are people who don't want to represent it at all. They want to represent what they think is the truth. What you have to do at this point, and this is what you're doing at this point, and I felt that I need to do, was to allow those who think that know that something's wrong to have the argument to spit back at them. If you don't know what to say when they give you the narrative that has been scripted for them to say, and using their emotions because they either have a relative or a friend, you have to be able to get past that and get right to the core of their reasoning and logic, which is very difficult nowadays because everything is motivated from the feminist point of view, which is to deal with feelings rather than logic. See, and feminism has its own type of logic that's based upon, some kind of twisted thinking based on some kind of twisted feeling, and they don't see it that way. And the most dangerous person is the one who thinks that they know exactly what it is feminism is, or what transgenderism is, and they'll be like rabid dogs to actually just go sick them. And so they'll just give you the narrative, and with enough money and enough people who's saying, you're so intolerant, you're just a bigot, and then all the words they created, homophobic, transphobic. These are words that they created in order to give themselves validity and to protect their own perversity. Well, I have words that I'm going to introduce tomorrow. Okay? Words I coined. And I even have definition, noun, pronoun. So as if they can create them, why can't we?
Right.
And that's what I think teachers need to do nowadays. I know that there are brothers out there like, what is it? No, not hetero, straight black pride.
Straight black pride.
They have to develop a counter language. There has to be a language that puts that in check. In other words, when you are playing chess, they move your pawn, because that's all that they're playing with now.
Right.
Okay? They're just playing with the pawns. The kings and everybody are laying back to see what the pawns can do. Can the pawn get to the other side? Well, right now, guess what? The pawn has gotten to our side and made them kings and queens. Queens more than they are kings. They've turned the queens into kings and the kings into queens. Why? Because the pawns are back there now and they're supporting that madness. You understand?
Right.
So what you have to do is meet the semantics and the semiotics with counterbalances so that you can give legitimacy to those who are being pushed into the closet because we don't know what to say. They're taking your jobs and they're threatening you. They're doing all this. Okay, you're supposed to be all about tolerance. Yet still, you can't tolerate me telling you I don't think that you're so-and-so. And you're supposed to be about accept me for who I am. Well, wait a minute. You just cut off your penis. You didn't accept who you were. So you want me to accept you now, and you couldn't accept yourself back then. Why? Because you're twisted in the brain, and you think that I was born this because they told you there's no such thing as gender. Gender is selective.
I worked at Barnes and Noble for like a hot month after I graduated, and they have a section for kids. about homosexuality, lesbian, everything.
Gender fluid, they call them.
Bugged me out.
Yes, gender fluidity.
Bugged me out.
Where did that word come? Gender fluidity. What the hell does that mean? You know, it means that I can tell you. In other words, and they even leave it up now. Before, you had to reach the age of reason to know that, hey, you were reasoning. Okay? Now you could be 3 years old and they tell you, well, I knew, this is a dude now, a young boy, about 12, 13, I knew I was a woman, a girl, at the age of 3. What? You didn't even reach the age of reason yet. And yet still you knew? My son, Amen, at one time, at 1.5, 2 years of age, when he began to walk, he put on one of his mother's shoes and one of my shoes and was trying to walk on them, negotiating. I think it was 2. And I almost fell down. I had to catch him halfway on the steps. That means he was either bi or straight. No. He's 2 or 3 years of age. And how do you say that you're the one, and this is what they call projection in psychiatry, when you're psychotic. They call it cognitive dissonance, which is what white people suffer from. Right. But they also call projection, and the way they put all their sicknesses on other people so they could dehumanize them and therefore say, see, it's your problem, not mine. Well, this is what projection is. This is how these sick parents are saying that my child at 3, who's a boy, is actually a girl. You're projecting that, which is your sickness, onto the child, who's a blank slate that follows your orders. He cannot eat or drink or have any place to stay by himself. So he is your intellectual and psychological prisoner. So now you're telling me as a woman, because this is what lesbians are doing today, they're adopting little boys and raising them as little girls. They're actually mutilating them and castrating them and changing them into the, hey, listen, don't be angry with me. This is what's happening. There's a war on boys and a war on women, because now that men are the new women, who are women? What is a woman today? All right? Because the gay men are actually defining what you look like. Check it out. Everything that you wear, they create. Your face makeup, they're the ones who teach the other women how to make your face up. And them super big eyebrows, where do you think they created that from? Where do you think you girls with them gigantic eyebrows that look like you got two big mice sitting on your face? Why? Because that's what the gays used to, the transvestites and the ones who play in the RuPaul move. They used to do that to cover the brow ridge so it doesn't look as masculine. So you have to understand that even the boys are wearing, what do you think the men wearing all these super tight stuff and the jacket, a suit jacket that you're supposed to wear as a man that cuts you over here so you look like a man, they're cutting them up here. That's where the women wear their jackets. So who you think it wants you to look like a woman? A man? No. You're wearing clothes that the entire homosexual community who runs the fashion industry wants you to look like. That's how they want the boys to look like, so that you're more bait as a heterosexual. As a heterosexual male, you are the treasure to the homosexual community. Because if they can turn you, they got a prize. Okay, see, he's been gay all along. Why? Because I know I have turned him. That's how they play it. And don't believe that they're just sitting there, just being in their gayness and just, being persecuted. Oh, I'm being persecuted to change. No. I've been behind the scenes in Broadway. I know a star, a very big superstar, who was my girlfriend at one time. And when they were making them up, there were nothing but men back there that looked like women. And they were the ones that's what they call beating that face. What do you think the antics that most girls picked up? Where do you think that came from? Where do you think the term, hey Miss Girl, hey Miss Thing is a dude who didn't know whether he was a girl or a boy, but that was the way that they identified one another. So the language that you're speaking belongs to the gay. Everything that you do, young sisters, everything that you think that you do that's making you a woman is actually another man who thinks he's a woman making you a woman. It's insane at this particular time. But know that things are ab ordo ab chaos. We need the chaos in order to create the order that we want, the so-called New World Order. But again, this ain't preaching hate. I'm talking about you all who are in that community that's imposing yourself on us and telling us, like it or not, this is who we're going to be. Well, I look at it this way. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you're a man coming up in a skirt with high heels, looking at me and saying I'm supposed to look at you like that, and you're dressing like a woman because you're gender fluid, then I'm going to say, if you come at me and cross me, I'm not going to have anything to do with you. And it has nothing to do with me hating you. It's just that how could I hate, as a doctor for myself, how could I hate someone who's sick? How could I hate someone who has a problem with their mental, their chemistry and their psychology? I can't hate you. I cannot bring myself to hate, because that's superfluous energy. That's a waste of energy. I can't hate. But what I can do is critique and take my reasoning, my logic, my critical thinking into every case that I look at. I don't hate you. All I know is that they've opened the back door to the asylum, and they want me now to tell you that the inmates are the new people to form the new paradigm. No, it's not going to happen. Not from hate, but I'm going to let you know that if you become the predominant thought process, that we are heading towards an extinction. A scientifically planned out and instigated and implemented and funded form of extinction.
With that, where can you be reached?
Where can I be reached? You can reach me right here. No, I'm only kidding. Well, if we have certain services that we can help you with. We have consultations. My wife and I, we can help you with marriage, with your nutritional consultation. We have 2 schools, one for adults and one for children. We have the University of Commission Sciences for men and women, and we have the Institute for Self-Mastery for children 7 years of age, all the way up to high school. We definitely teach at home. We were the first to introduce this particular paradigm. We would like you all to join us. For the children, because I know that people are dropping out. They don't want their children being taught that nonsense that we just spoke about. So the best thing to do is to call us at 800-847-1291. I guess you could put that up at a time. Yes, the University of Commission Sciences, Dr. Philip Valentine, Dr. Nalani Valentine, at area code 800-847-1291. And we also do the vaccination exemption packages. We were the first in our community to do this and to create a vaccination exemption package for educating parents against the vaccination paradigm. And we went into court 3 times with our paperwork and won 3 times in New York. And we were the first to actually put together a formal set of paperwork throughout the country. And now we see it everywhere. In our own indigenous community, we did that. There were others that were out there trying to teach people about it, but nobody to actually put the package together so that they can have a countermeasure to the nonsense that the school system and every other system that's out there that want to attack your child has been given to us. So, again, 800-847-1291. And I want you all to do this. Support this brother, okay? He's going to be one of the treasures for you all. When the time comes and you all ain't got no answers, you're going to be trying to find a leader that's going to be telling you all the definite truth. Here he is. All right? Take that to the bank, but don't deposit it. Okay? Keep it to yourself. Put it into something that's going to appreciate. Because banks are going down. But that's another story.
Thank you so much. This has been an honor. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, brother.
It's UrbanX TV. Peace.